On today's Gaming Commentaries episode, we will be taking a look at how Cyberpunk 2077 went from the worst game of 2020 to potentially the biggest turnaround in 2023. But before we get to the story, make sure you guys hit that like, hit that share, hit that subscribe button, and we now have a Patreon. If you guys want early access to my reviews, article readings, and gaming commentaries, we're starting that up again. So look out for more details in a few minutes, in a few videos. But let's get into today's story. And today we're gonna get started first with the downside. We're gonna start in 2020 because this game released December in 2020. And let's take a look at this article by The Guardian. And the article reads Cyberpunk 2077, how 2020's biggest video game launch turned into shambles. And it is starring Keanu Reeves. So Cyberpunk 2077, one of the most anticipated video games of the year, was released last week, or in 2020 in that case. A dystopian romp around a Blade Runner inspired city, and had all the ingredients for a perfect storm of hype. It's been nearly a decade in the making. Its creator, Warsaw CD Projekt Red, was behind one of the greatest games of the last decade with The Witcher 3. Think Game of Thrones but grimmer. It stars Keanu Reeves, who is popular with gamers as he is everybody else. 8 million people had pre-ordered and paid for the game before it came out, but since December 10th, it's gone horribly wrong. On launch day, the reviews were good, great, even many critics praised the fictionals, the Night City's realism, its striking skyscaping architecture, and grubby alleys. They love the integrating gunplay, bouncy characters, and neon swagger. Some expressed reservations about the game's rather adolescent tone and its eagerness to objectify women's bodies, neither of which were a surprise to anyone who had been keeping an eye to the game's marketing. Here's where it gets rough. But soon those early reviews gave way to complaints from irritated players. The game they waited for years was faulty, the code clearly unfinished. Bizarre clear glitches were impeding people's adventures in Night City, or the game was crashing so often that it was barely playable. Several scenes were reported to have caused epileptic seizures, prompting the game's maker to tweet, "We're working on a separate warning in the game aside from the one that exists in the end user license agreement. Creating a more permanent solution, the dev team is currently exploring, and that will be implementing as soon as possible." So way back in 2020, this thing was bad. The critics praised it, but the players said no. The players did not like. On the 18th of December, Sony pulled the game away from the store and offered refunds to anyone who purchased it, an exceptionally rare event that I can only recall happening once before, when the game Ashes Cricket 2013 was so fantastically broken that they removed the sale and never seen again. And that's a huge loss for CD Projekt Red at the time. And here's what happened. Technical bugs and glitches are a fact of life for video games that result in an intensely complicated development process involving hundreds of artists, programmers, and animators working together in a gigantic, rapidly updating program. Okay? Early reviewers missed these issues because CD Projekt Red only gave them access to the more stable PC version of the game before release. And under a strict non-disclosure agreement that prohibited showing any actual footage. This attempt to control the message has badly backfired, making it appear that the developer was trying to conceal the game's problems and infuriating players until it can be fixed, which will cost yet more expensive months of development time. It won't be on the sale on PlayStation again. Cyberpunk 2077 creators have issued a series of apologies and promises to make things right. It might seem impossible that the games this problem that have been in development for this long was which got a lot of money behind it. Good grounds in the state. It certainly points towards the problems at CD Projekt Red, whose staff certainly must be exhausted after months of overtime during the pandemic. The game had already been delayed twice since April to allow more time for improvement. And as you can see here, there's a lot to read in here. But I'm not going to read the whole thing. Because most of the issues back in 2020 were the glitches, the game breaking bugs, the mission breaking bugs. Everything that you think of video games nowadays, there were a lot of them. But fast forward to 2023, and this article by IGN, which was recently published on May 2023. In May of 2023. Excuse me, March 30th, 2023 at 11:42 a.m. Cyberpunk's 2077 turnaround just gave CD Projekt Red its second best revenue year ever. And let's go ahead and read this. With the rocket launch of Cyberpunk 2077 firmly in the rearview mirror, CD Projekt Red seems to have fully bounced back from where it was once at the end of 2020, both in goodwill and in financials, celebrating its second best earnings year in 2022, despite no major releases. Per CD Projekt Red's earnings report, Cyberpunk 2077 revenues were up 18% year over year, or YoY, in 2022, with 94% of the units sold being digital, like Steam. That's a pretty unusual figure in video games, which typically leads to enormous unit sales and then see a steady but consistent drop over time. CD Projekt attributes the sales to the long-term work on improving issues with Cyberpunk 2077, as well as the success of the companion Netflix series Cyberpunk Edgerunners. And having The Witcher 3 have round doesn't hurt either. So The Witcher 3 also experienced a turnaround when it came out. It sucked at first, and then all of a sudden, here comes The Witcher 3 movie. Here comes more players, and all of a sudden, here comes the turnaround for Witcher 3. And now Cyberpunk 2077 comes back from 2020 all the way to 2023. And both of them have some type of Netflix series. Cyberpunk had one, and now Witcher 3 had one too. It's a significant turnaround for a game plagued with bugs and glitches on the base PS4 and Xbox One at launch, which its own developers reportedly did not expect to be ready by its 2020 launch date. But multiple patches since slowly began to rebuild goodwill, and the 1-2 punch of a next-gen update in February last year, and Edgerunners seems to have convinced people it was worth returning to Night City. CD Projekt expects to release a Cyberpunk 2077 expansion in the second half of this year, titled Phantom Liberty. One side in the investor presentation indicates that a marketing campaign is planned to begin for the expansion in June, this month actually. In fact, we might even play it as part of our gaming channel. Live, potentially. Consolidated revenues for CD Projekt in 2022 reached 953 million PLN, or $222 million US dollar, with 347 million PLN, or $81 million US, in net profit. Both revenue and net profit were the second best in the company's history. CD Projekt says that it has reinvested over 200 million, or $747 million back into future development projects, including the recently re-evaluated multiplayer Witcher game codenamed Project Sirius from Molasses Flood. So that, my friends, is a turnaround of Cyberpunk 2077. And we're going to take a look now at the reviews for Cyberpunk 2077 on Steam, because we're going to buy it there. And as you can see, you can tell that the game as of today, is mostly positive. And recent reviews have put it at very positive, in fact, at 3,596. Now, we won't know how the percentage is 87% of the 3,596 user reviews are in the positive range, which is amazing. And if we take a look at the numbers, overall, 79%. That's not bad at all, considering where this game was in 2020. In addition, let's take a look at another game from the Witcher 3. The Witcher 3 also had a similar turnaround, also by CD Projekt Red. As you can see, it's now overwhelmingly positive. But remember, this game started out rough too. And they have expansion passes, and they have all this good stuff. So it came all the way back. Yes, there are going to be some negative reviews, but they're few and far between now. And that's not bad at all. Okay. So what can we learn from today's story? Today, we learn that a game can come back from a very rough start. However, it's not many. Not many games can say that we came all the way back from a very rough beginning. CD Projekt Red had done it twice, The Witcher 3 and Cyberpunk 2077. Those two games were the few that came all the way back from a very bad launch to start their life cycle. The fact that Cyberpunk 2077 came all the way back tells us that the developers are putting in a game of love and putting a lot of effort into it. In fact, Steam awarded them a prize for being the Labor of Love Award, which is basically most improved game. So that's what we can learn from today's story. If you guys enjoyed what you learned, make sure you guys hit that like, hit that share, hit the subscribe button, and we're going to be back with more gaming commentaries here on the RetroYuuki gaming channel and the main channel. Hopefully you enjoyed, and we'll see you on the next gaming commentary.